Let me read to you a passage from the 12th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, verses 38 to 44. It's the Gospel for Saturday after the 9th Sunday of Ordinary Time. St. Mark writes, "As he taught, Jesus said, 'Watch out for the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and to be greeted in the marketplaces and have the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. Such men will be punished most severely.'" Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins, worth only a fraction of a penny. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "I tell you the truth, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." That's from Mark chapter 12, verses 38 to 44. Let us think of that widow. You know, there are 2 kinds of persons who shape history. There are the ordinary persons, and there are those who are beyond the ordinary. Alexander the Great, who lived from 356 to 323 BC, is mentioned in the first book of Maccabees. He is also commonly supposed to be spoken of in the book of Daniel. Tutored by Aristotle until the age of 16, at the age of 30, he had created one of the largest empires of the ancient world. He was undefeated in battle and is considered one of history's most successful commanders. By the time he conquered King Darius III and the Persian Empire, his dominion stretched from the Adriatic Sea to the Indus River. Seeking to reach the ends of the world and the great outer sea, he invaded India in 326 BC. Significantly for our purposes here, at the Hyphasis River, his troops refused to march further east. His general, Coenus, pleaded with him to return. The men, he said, longed again to see their parents, their wives, their children, their homeland. Alexander agreed eventually and turned back. He died in Babylon in 323 BC. Alexander was an amazing young man and may be said to exemplify the extraordinary, but he was completely dependent on the ordinary mortals who made up his virtually invincible army. Without him, they could not have proceeded, but without them, he too could not proceed. Because of them, the ordinary persons he led, the course of history was not what it would have been had it depended only on Alexander. In the history of salvation, as recorded in the sacred scriptures, God calls special persons. At times, though by no means always, those persons are extraordinary by any normal estimation. Moses was a great man, as were others, such as, say, David and Elijah, and God called him, Moses, to lead his people out of slavery through the wilderness to the promised land. "Come," he said, "I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring forth my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt." Exodus chapter 3, verse 10. And this he did. But he was, in a different sense, dependent on the ordinary person, the sons of Israel. Moses knew this too. He said, "But behold, they will not listen to me, or listen to my voice, for they will say, 'The Lord did not appear to you.'" Exodus chapter 4, verse 1. When Moses delayed with God on the mountain, we read, they made a molten calf, and they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. Exodus chapter 32 verse 4. The calls of God involve not only extraordinary persons, but ordinary ones too. The purely secular historian would have to be impressed with the impact on the world exercised by Jesus Christ. It has been a multifaceted impact involving religion, thought, ideas, the changes of societies and nations. Christ conquered the Roman Empire without any sword, just by the appeal of the thought of his person and the power of his teaching. This is not to speak of what that thought really involved, but what did our Lord start with in terms of his founding team? It appears to have been a very ordinary lot. They were fishermen, a tax collector, and doubtless persons of other ordinary trades. They exemplified in general the ordinary. All of this brings us to our gospel passage that I read earlier from Mark chapter 12 verse 38 to 44, which ought put heart into the life of every ordinary person. His or her life can have the greatest value and meaning. We read that Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins, worth only a fraction of a penny. That was the scene, and it involved many rich people and one poor widow who had no more than 2 very small copper coins. She exemplifies, let us say, the many very ordinary persons. But the Son of God made man immediately pronounces on who was the most significant person in that scene, the one who did most in the sight of the Creator. It was the poor widow, and she did more than all the others. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she out of her poverty put in everything, all she had to live on. This tells us that in the sight of the Lord of heaven and earth, the little person, the person normally considered of no account, the person who is with little of the influence of those who are extraordinary, can do more in the sight of God than their betters. The secret to doing great things in the sight of God is to give all to him. Whatever we are and whatever we have, the secret to a life that approaches perfection is to give everything to God in obedience to his will. It is to be like the poor widow in her giving of her all. It is in this way that both the ordinary and the extraordinary person achieve their true end. The poor widow of our gospel scene may be said to reflect the great commandment about which our Lord was once questioned. Which is the greatest commandment? The greatest is this, that you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind and strength. The second is like it, that you love your neighbour as yourself. On this hangs all the law and the prophets. The poor widow shows what this entails. It means giving to God in loving obedience all we have to live on, whatever be the cost, and specifically in imitation of Jesus Christ. He is the one par excellence who gave everything in fulfillment of the will of the Father for the salvation of the world. Let us strive to be like him then,